Westmore right now doing my student teaching. I'll wait for you guys. Okay. So I'm at Westmore right now. I get to hang out with juniors all day. Love it. So I'm going to talk about Victorian values. What do you guys know about Victorian values? Queen Victoria. So what country are we in? England, Great Britain, okay? So Queen Victoria. So Queen Victoria was the Queen of the United Kingdom from 1837 to 1901. She ascended the throne when she was 18. Her uncle, George IV, was before her. And then she was queen until her death in 1901. So she was queen for a very long time. She was also Empress of India. Why was she Empress of India? Because India was a British colony, that's right. And she was also married to a German prince who was her first cousin, Albert. They had tons of kids and tons of grandkids. And she was known as, guys, back there, thank you. They had tons of kids, and she was the grandmother of Europe because all of her kids and grandkids ascended the thrones in other places. Okay, so the Victorian era, this was a period of tons of change. So there was cultural change, political change, industrial, this was Industrial Revolution, scientific, Darwin was during this time with origin of species and evolution and stuff. You guys have learned about biology. And yeah, there's cultural, everything's changing. This is expanding because of the British Empire, so these changes are starting in England, and then they're moving out because of all the different colonies. Reform movements, the middle class are getting more of a say in what's going on. So the Reform movement of 1832, they're able to vote, which is a big deal, so they have power now, political power. And also economic growth. It was a time of a lot of prosperity, and people are getting paid more. So if you're getting paid more, you're happier, right? Okay, so this is all the foundation of these different morals that come into play during this time. So morals just set for what's right and wrong. And this is the climate of the entire Victorian era, so her entire reign. And this was contrasted with the period before it when George IV was ruling. He was kind of a playboy and kind of crazy. So they kind of reined that in and made it more strict. So these included sexual repression. They didn't talk about having sex. They didn't have it before marriage. It was just kind of, you only had it to have kids. That was it. Okay, they didn't, it wasn't like it is today where you turn on the TV and all you see is sex. It's not like that. I mean, obviously they didn't have TV, but if they did, it wouldn't be on there. It'd be like Disney Channel 24/7. Okay, so also they had high morality. So they thought what was good and bad, they had high standards for that. Also, their sense of propriety was really high, so it was all about doing the proper thing and doing what's right. They covered things like the legs of pianos because they thought that might not be proper for people to see, which sounds kind of crazy now, I think. Okay, a low tolerance for crime. So things today that you would get just fined for, they were sent to jail for. So like pickpocketing and stuff like that, they went to jail. Homosexuality, they were put to death, which seems pretty crazy because people nowadays can just do what they want, right? So low tolerance for crime. Also, hard work and self-improvement was a big part of their life. So this included everyone in the family, from dad who needed to work hard to support and provide, to children who shouldn't be lazy. They don't need to be just sitting around not doing anything. They need to go out and do things. Okay, so Victorian women. This can tell you a lot about the social structure in England during this time. So there were separate spheres for men and women. Have you guys heard about separate spheres at all? Never? Okay. So the sphere for men would be intellectual. So theirs is reason and it's public and politics and those kinds of ideas. The sphere for women is going to be private. It's feminine, weak, emotional, very polarized gender roles, okay? These were the same for both the upper class and the middle class, but the lower class, it was a little different. It was also polarized, but it was like they had different jobs. So lower class women would like work in the home, they would be maids and stuff like that. So not quite throwing dinner parties like upper class women, but still different from men. So these reform movements, organized feminism became a thing. So people are starting to want the right to vote. They're fighting for suffragist movements for women and for jobs and to get to go to college, because women weren't going to college right now. So they're fighting for those jobs and stuff like that. Okay, so we talked about these high morals and propriety and all this. Does this sound realistic for the entire population to live under? No? Okay, yeah. It wasn't realistic for them. So child labor was a big deal. This contradicted a lot of their ideals because they're throwing children into sweatshops and they're working all kinds of hours and it's not good for them. So that kind of went against what they were doing. Also prostitution. This was like rampant during this time. Tons of people were becoming prostitutes, and it was because it was like a better alternative to working in the factories and stuff like that, which sounds pretty crazy, but it was for a lot of them. Also, Queen Victoria herself collected male nude figures and like gave them as presents to her husband, which I think is kind of funny. So it's not as perfect as it makes it sound. They make it sound that everyone's living this high moral life and not doing anything wrong. But this is realistic. Okay, so this is the last thing we're doing. I have this quote from a guy he was an author, and he went out and talked to lower class people, and just to kind of see what their life was like, and then he put it together in a book and published it. So this particular quote, it's about a 16-year-old girl who was an orphan, and she was kind of talking about her life. So can I have someone volunteer to read this? Anyone? Okay, yeah, can you read this?
Okay, I was never happy all the time, but I could get no character and could not get out of the life. I lodged all this time at a lodging house in Pitt Street. They were all thieves and bad girls. I have known between 3 and 4 dozen boys and girls slept in one room. The beds were horrid, filthy, and full of vermin. There were very wicked carrying on. The boys, if any difference, was the worst. We lay packed on a full night, a dozen boys and girls squeezed into one bed. That was very often the case. Some at the foot and some at the top, boys and girls all mixed. I can't go into all the particulars, but whatever could take place in words or acts between boys and girls did take place. In the midst of the others, I am sorry to say I took part in these bad ways myself. But I wasn't so bad as some of the others. There was only a candle burning at night, but in summer it was lit great part of the night. Some boys and girls slept without any clothes, and would dance around the room that way. I have seen them, and wicked as I felt ashamed. I have seen 2 dozen capering about the room that way. Some mere children, the boys generally being missed.
Okay, so how is this different? How is her lifestyle different from the morals that we were talking about, these Victorian ideals? How is it different?
Because she's 16 having naked people like that.
Yeah, so she's 16 and people are running around naked. That's not sexual repression like we talked about, right? Boys and girls sleeping together in the same room. Okay, so how is this similar? Can you see any similarities? They're a little harder to pick out.
She didn't talk about it in great detail.
Yeah, she didn't talk about it in great detail. Was she proud that she was living like this? No, so she says she's wicked. So she obviously understands how she's supposed to be living, but that doesn't mean that it's realistic for everyone. Okay? So does anyone have any questions over Victorian values? Good? Okay, thank you.